I'm a pretty big fan of The Boys, the show. Haven't read the comic. Over the years, I've started seeing a take floating around that The Boys needs to finally kill off Homelander, and that they are mostly keeping him alive at this point because of the character's popularity as a villain and his iconic status as part of the show's brand. I disagree with this take for a few reasons and want to talk about why. Before that, though, I will say that I do see where this criticism of the show comes from, even though I ultimately disagree. Butcher has been pretty focused on taking out Homelander since the beginning of the series, and yet the dude remains alive. I understand how that fact, when taken on its own, could make the show feel like it's been spinning its wheels. However, I think there's a whole lot going on in the show, both in terms of the plot and the themes, as well as pretty solid character development that allows the show to maintain a sense of momentum, despite the larger status quo of Homelander alive and Vought in power with the boys as underdogs remaining mostly unchanged. Now, all that being said, let's talk about Homelander and why I think the show should not kill him off. First, I think Homelander as a character is just pretty integral to the political commentary of the show, and also that killing him specifically, both in terms of storytelling and in terms of the character's in-show motivations, has just become increasingly irrelevant to what the boys are actually trying to achieve, beating the system and bringing down Vought. Much like the real-world political figure the Homelander character is partially playing off of, at least in the show, taking specifically him down isn't really going to bring about all that much change. Remember how us Americans turned out in kind of record numbers in 2020 to vote Donald Trump out of office? And then how things mostly continue to suck in the years since then? Yeah, that's because while Trump certainly is a problem, he was not the problem. Same thing with Homelander. Not that attempting to bring down bad people isn't a noble goal, it is, but these guys are just symptoms of a larger systemic rot. If you take out the bad guy without addressing the underlying issues as well, there will just be another bad guy who comes along to fill the void. Nothing changes.
This might all seem like needless hair splitting when talking about a superhero show, but The Boys is kind of about this specifically and even directly points this out. The show is, in large part, about the absurd difficulty of taking down an entity so all-encompassing that it has basically become systemically ingrained in American culture and government.
Like, they are fighting against a company that is basically the U.S. military-industrial complex, Fox News, and Disney's Marvel Studios rolled up into one that has seemingly unlimited financial resources, key assets in the government, and overwhelming public support.
Oh, and is filled with superhuman people who can rip your body apart with little to no effort.
So, we know that killing off Homelander won't really make a difference in defeating Vought and the systemic issues it causes, but more personally to the character, it wouldn't even be defeating Homelander in a way that matters to him. While I'm sure Homelander would rather not die and maybe doesn't even think he can be killed, what he cares about most is that people love him. He says he'll settle for fear, but it's pretty clear that it's immensely important to him that the people love and worship him, and at this point, people do, regardless of what he does. Side note, he does seem to be shitting his pants a bit when he's fighting Soldier Boy and superpowered Butcher and Huey, but even if they had killed him at Herogasm, I think it still would have ended up being a defeat for the boys. We've seen throughout the show how Vought has spun things that our protagonists hoped would be catastrophic PR disasters into survivable moments or even wins. Huey and Annie leak the truth about Compound V, and Vought pins it all on the conveniently dead Madeline Stillwell and plays the victim. Newman's hearing, where Vogelbaum was being brought in to testify on Compound V, ends with a head-popping fiasco that makes Vought look innocent to the general public, as enough of Vought's own people are killed in that incident. Stormfront turned out to be a literal Third Reich-era Nazi, and Vought just rewrites their Dawn of the Seven movie to paint Homelander and the rest of the Seven as brave heroes who were just deceived by her and team up to defeat her.
Guess this means we're breaking up. Nazi bitch.
This ties into the first point as well, but all of this is to say that Vought would just turn Homelander into a martyr and have a PR layup with his death, painting him as some glorious fallen hero. It's what they did with Soldier Boy. And I guess this would all tie into the political commentary of the show, as that's basically what America does with all of our war criminals when they die. I could also see the boys themselves just not really caring at this point and killing him anyway. And that brings us to my last and most personal preference-based argument. I just don't think killing him off is the most interesting use of the character. For one, I just think there's still a lot of stuff to explore with him as a character. Beyond that, I think the rivalry and parallels he has with Butcher are a pretty important element of the show. I know the whole "we're not so different, you and I" thing is pretty played out, but I think both the series overall and Butcher's character specifically would suffer if Homelander is removed from the equation.
So let's instead talk about what I would consider to be an interesting use of the Homelander character going forward that still shakes up the status quo in a way that people would find satisfying. An important note, too, that I think the right thing for the show's story is to not continue on all that much longer. I'm thinking the current upcoming season and then one fifth final season after that. So my idea will keep that structure in mind.
Season 3 ended with Homelander essentially at peak power and influence. He's able to murder a dude in front of a ton of people, is celebrated for it, and Ryan even seems to like it.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
So, Season 4 is going to play around with that. A totally unhinged Homelander who has no fear for the consequences of his actions and gains more and more adoration from his primarily white nationalist base.
Then you take it all away from him.
We already have Soldier Boy's new power from last season that strips other soups of their abilities, and we also now have this soup-killing virus introduced in the spin-off series Gen V. I'm not sure exactly what the writers are planning to do with this virus in the upcoming season, but we do know that Butcher is aware of its existence. Most of the main team won't want to risk killing Annie or Kimiko with exposure to a lethal virus, but maybe they look into some way to rework the virus or combine it with Soldier Boy's power removal ability to make a chemical that takes away superpowers. Then, the victory of Season 4 is that they hit Homelander with it.
In Season 5, we follow the season of Homelander at peak power and influence, with Homelander now at his lowest point. Maybe he is put on trial and is forced to testify in some big case against Vought, and we get to really see how he squirms and gets frustrated when he doesn't have his superpowers to rely on to beat down people who piss him off.
Anyway, what do y'all think? If you're someone who is feeling like it was time for Homelander to go, have I persuaded you otherwise? I just hate to see this show suffer by removing an interesting character when there's still some pretty cool stuff they could do with him. And that's going to be all from me this time. I'll be back here with another video sometime soon-ish, so subscribe in order to catch that. You can also find me every other week reviewing new movies with my co-host Niles on our podcast, Play, Pause, Rewind, which you can find on YouTube here or wherever you get your podcast. All that's linked in the description. Thank y'all so much. Catch you next time. Bye.